Welcome back. Today I'd like to analyze at least a few rapid games. I tend to play at least one each evening before I go to bed, and I don't have time to analyze them right then, so I'm going to try to do that now. The first one was last night's on chess.com, which I have just run the game review. Well, it looks like I did really well. I played 87% accuracy, my opponent had 73.8%, and if I'm not mistaken, they were just over 1200 when we played, and I was just under 1200, and this put me back up and it put them back down. So we were both right around the 1200 area. My opponent only had one blunder and two mistakes. It shows here that I didn't have any blunders or mistakes or misses, but I had a few inaccuracies. But it does look from this graph like I had the advantage most of the way right out of the opening, so maybe we'll be able to learn from my opponent's mistakes rather than mine, but hopefully I'll be able to learn from some of my inaccuracies. Looks like 3 of my inaccuracies were right here in the middle, which is usually the weakest point of my game. My opponent opened with e4 and I played the French defense. This part is normal. Here my opponent usually takes this pawn and then I take back. And then they play d4 and I get this knight out and we have a completely symmetrical position. But this opponent didn't take or push past. That's the second move I often see here is pushing past, and then I play c5 and they play the d pawn then, and we've transposed into the advanced variation. But whichever one of those two that they meant to do, they played them out of order because they played d4 now. And I felt like that was off. I thought that I could just take this pawn if they do that because they've left nothing defending their e-pawn. That does look like the best move, so I played it. Now, I think that's happened to me a couple of times before, and in every instance, the opponent puts their knight in here on g5, which makes sense given how often Stockfish says to put the knight on g5. But here they're supposed to put it on e5, which is right in between my two pawns there, or go back. Actually, even going back would be a mistake. Okay, so they put it on g5, and I wasn't sure what to do. It is defended, but I guess I could have played... No, I couldn't have played h6. That wouldn't have been the best move. But if their bishop wasn't defending it, obviously I could just take it. But now they're threatening my e-pawn. I can defend it by playing f5, but that's not one of my two better moves. And I can defend it by getting the knight out, which I thought made sense. That does look like it's my best move, so I'm up nearly -2 on move 4. I don't know how many moves would have been rated about the same for my opponent, but these top two are rated about the same. And one is to put another attacker on this pawn, which I don't know that I can add another defender to. I mean, I could put my queen there to defend it, but I think that would be bad because their knight would take my queen. But I wanted to develop this bishop anyway, and they've put their knight where I can pin it, so that helps me develop, and I'm ready to castle. It's interesting here that my opponent's best move is to block that pin with the bishop, because very often it's not the best move to block the pin with the bishop. But here it is. My opponent must have seen those other evaluations where it's not the best move, so they didn't do it, which is what most of my opponents do anytime I do pin a knight, which I often don't. I'm more often the victim of those pins than actually doing them. But they played a3, and I'm never sure when I'm supposed to take or when I'm supposed to back away or, run back here or something like that. Here I thought, if I take, I'll double their pawns, but that gives them another pawn that can attack center squares. Yeah, that's my best move. Okay, well, I played my best move. Oh, it was a great move. Okay, and they took back. And I was supposed to play h6 now since I have just removed the defender, the other attacker of my pawn. But if I did that, wouldn't they just put their knight back here? And then I would play c5. Okay. Well, I thought since I had just gotten this bishop out and got rid of it, I could go ahead and castle, but that's inaccurate. Okay, this is one of my inaccuracies. Okay, I should have played h6 now. They probably would have gone back there because it wouldn't make sense to give the knight up for the pawn or put it there where I could just take it for the pawn. Okay, so if I played h6 and they went to h3 with it, I would play c5. I'm trying to figure out c5. I'm not going to take their pawn at any point, right? Because that would help them undouble their pawns. They're probably not going to take me at that point because I would take their queen. They would have to lose their right to castle to take back. Then I would castle, I guess. But yeah, I don't think they're going to take it, and I'm not going to take them, so I'm not sure why I'm playing c5 other than just generally playing c5 so I can put the knight behind it. I'll probably never be in this exact position again, so without understanding the reasons for that move, it's not going to help me. Okay, but castling brought me back down to around -1. They should have put the queen on e2, okay, which adds another attacker to this pawn. And it says I would add another defender by bringing the queen up, and then they would add another attacker to it, but I would just take that pawn. It says they would take back with the g-pawn, but I think they would take back with the knight. A human opponent, maybe? I don't know. Maybe they would take back with the g-pawn. Okay, but they didn't put their queen on e2. They put their bishop on e3, which I guess blocks my pawn from moving forward, but it was a mistake because I can play h6 now. Okay, I did play h6 now. That's interesting. There's not that much difference from saving the knight versus playing h4. And it says if they played h4, I would not take their knight. Guess that's because that lets the rook in and also lets the bishop retake that pawn. So they could have just played h4 and they would have been in as good a position as they are now. That's interesting. Well, they played their best move, knight to h3, which is the only move that made sense to me at that point. And now I'm supposed to play c5 again. And again, they're not going to take it. Or if I don't want to play c5 and put the knight behind it, which is what it wants me to do, it says just put the knight in front of that pawn. Okay, well, I did want to get the knight out, but I didn't want to put it in front of that pawn. I wasn't quite ready to play c5 yet, because again, I don't understand what it's doing. And now their queen is defended by the rook, so the king doesn't have to move, so they could just take the pawn. It says that they wouldn't, but they could, and then I would take their queen, and they would take back, and I couldn't take that pawn back because it would be defended by that bishop. So yeah, I really don't understand c5 here, but I did want to get the knight out, so I put it here on d7, which is my second inaccuracy. And again, I don't understand the other two moves, why I would play them, and without understanding that, I can't understand why this one's inaccurate. That's frustrating. My opponent's supposed to play g4 now, but a second ago when I went to this position, it said to play bishop to e2, which is what they played, and it looks like it has about the same evaluation. Now I am supposed to play knight to d5, which I did. Not only is their front c-pawn undefended, but, from there I'm attacking this bishop. If I'm able to take it, then that opens up a square around their king. Seemed like a sensible move to me. I don't know what I would have played if I hadn't thought of that. Probably a6. That's probably what I would have played. But anyway, I did play that. I didn't know it was my best move. My opponent is supposed to bring this bishop back to save it and protect that pawn, or just play queen to d2. Queen to d2 protects the pawn, obviously, and protects the bishop so that they don't have to take back with the f-pawn. I don't know. Maybe my opponent was thinking about taking back with the f-pawn because they castled here, and it wasn't counted as a mistake or anything. Now if they take back with the f-pawn, that just opens up their rook. I'm supposed to take the undefended pawn. Okay, I did wonder about that, whether I should just go ahead and trade the knight for the bishop or take the undefended pawn first. I did take the undefended pawn because it was a free pawn. And now I'm 2 pawns ahead because they gave up that 1 pawn at the beginning of the game that they were never able to get back, their e-pawn. Now I'm attacking their queen, so they have to move it. They did move it, and I am supposed to take the other bishop. Oh, I just thought I was supposed to come back here and take that bishop, but I guess maybe this is the bad bishop, if they have a bad bishop in this position, because it's blocked in by its own pawn, and they have more pawns on dark squares than they do on light squares, so I guess taking their good bishop is better than threatening the bad bishop. That's how I'm explaining how that should have been my best move. I do remember wondering about that during the game, but I came back aiming at this bishop. Now the computer would play f3 here, I guess going after this undefended pawn. It says I would go ahead and take the bishop, and they would take back, and then I would play c5. I probably wouldn't have at that point. I probably would have taken their f-pawn. But my opponent played bishop to c4, which aims at this knight that I was about to move anyway, so I'm not sure what the point of that move was. By a very slight margin, it is not my best move to take their dark squared bishop. It's my best move to get this back knight up here to protect the front knight, and then they're going to play f3. And then I'm going to take that bishop anyway. Okay, well, that doesn't make a ton of sense to me, so I just took that bishop anyway. Looks like it really doesn't matter whether they take back with the queen or the pawn. They chose the pawn, which I probably would have to, because it opens up the rook and it keeps the queen in the background. I tend to prefer my queen slightly in the background where it can protect things from behind rather than being in danger out in the front. So I understand my opponent's choice there. Here again, I was supposed to play c5. Well, I sure wish I knew why. Okay, well, I didn't. I attacked their bishop with my knight, figuring it would go away. It doesn't matter, according to the engine, which one of these 2 squares it goes to. My opponent moved it back 1. I assume to not block the rook from guarding that pawn. I don't really know. I'm supposed to play c5 again. Again, for the 4th or 5th time. I don't understand why. I did understand that I have an undefended pawn here, so I went to defend it with my f-pawn, and I'm not worried about the back pawn because my bishop is currently defending the rear e-pawn, but that's not what I should have done. Oh, it says go ahead and put this knight on d5 now. Well, or c5, but I played f5. That's an inaccuracy because they can play knight to f4. Oh, because it would put another attacker on the rear e-pawn. Okay, at least I think that's what knight to f4 is doing. All right, well, my opponent did find that, and they found it really quick, too. I don't know if you saw that, but it looked like only 4 seconds passed before they found their best move. So maybe it was obvious from their point of view. From my point of view, it wasn't that obvious that when I went to protect the front pawn that they were going to be able to attack the rear pawn. Well, I thought they have 2 attackers on it now, and I could add another defender to it. I could add a rook as a defender to it, but not up here because then they could attack my rook with the knight. But I could add the rook as a defender here on e8, or I could add the queen as a defender, or I could block one of their attackers from seeing it, which is what I chose to do. Was that my best move? Yeah, by a little ways, that was my best move. Okay. And they are supposed to take it. I expected them to take with the knight here, but the engine says it's better to take with the bishop. They did take with the bishop, although they spent about, I think, 12 seconds thinking about that. I'm not sure why taking with one is better than the other. Obviously, I only have one move here, and that is to take back. I am still very slightly ahead, probably just because I've, taken two of my opponent's pawns, and they're supposed to play queen to a5, which adds another attacker to this pawn because their knight's already pointed at d5. Or queen to b4. What does queen to b4 do? I don't know. Oh, I guess it aims at the rook, and then maybe they're thinking about coming in this way with the knight? Well, no, because my rook's got two defenders. Oh, but they would still get the rook for the knight. Okay, Maybe that's what that's about, but that doesn't make sense because if they could take the knight for the rook, because if they could take the rook for the knight, then that would be good for them, and the queen over there wouldn't help at all. So I don't understand queen to b4. I think I understand queen to a5. My opponent forgot, I guess, that they hadn't yet played queen to a5, and they just took that pawn anyway, and I took back, and they resigned. Well, I definitely understand their last blunder there, giving away the knight for a pawn. Now, they are still supposed to play queen to b4, but I don't know that I would have kept playing if I was my opponent here and we both have so much time left. If it was a bullet game or a blitz game, I probably would have kept playing, just, hoping that my opponent runs out of time. But in a 10-minute rapid game with, 8 minutes left apiece, I understand why they would resign here. I think I understand their mistakes. I certainly understand why this was inaccurate because it just gives me that pawn. And I'm glad that I took it. I wasn't sure. And then here they made the further mistake of going here. I'm glad to know that's a mistake because I'm positive that's happened to me on multiple games in the past when I take this pawn. Because I'm pretty sure I've been in this exact position and they always go here. But they should have gone back, but their best move would have been coming in here to e5. And it says I would have just gotten this knight out and I guess pretend that their knight's not right there on e5. So yeah, I'm not sure exactly why this is a mistake, especially since I wasn't supposed to play h6. Well, because if I played h6, they would just take my pawn. But just getting this knight out. And then their knight is just there. And here it was inaccurate to castle because I should have chased their knight off first. And their mistake was getting the bishop out to e3. And here I did play h6. But all right, well, that's frustrating. I'm going to take a look at another recent game that I played, and hopefully I can learn more from that. Okay, this game that I played recently on Lichess ended in a threefold repetition, which it took my opponent apparently a lot longer to realize that than it did me. I kept trying to repeat positions and they kept trying to run their king around the board, but it's clearly a draw. I guess there are people that mess up in this position, but anyway, it took a lot longer than it should have before my opponent accidentally went into the same position for the third time. There was the first time up here and second time up here. It's certainly not a requirement that people at my level should have, studied all the different endgame possibilities and know which positions are a draw and which ones are not. I just happened to have done it, so I knew this was a draw. But anyway, we ought to be able to learn something from this one because I had 5 blunders and 7 mistakes. Wow. And my opponent had 9 blunders, including the one that put us back to even here because they were ahead last. The most recent one of us that was ahead was my opponent. Well, I guess let's go back and look at where all the blunders were. Were there any at the very beginning? Well, the first mistake was on move 4, so wow. Okay, so again, we had a game where my opponent played e4 and I played the French defense, and we had this position, and again, just like in that other game, my opponent played d4, and I took the pawn, and just as I said, my opponent went to g5, because I'm pretty sure that always happens. But in this game, I did not play knight to f6 or h6, which is what I would have thought. In this game, I played c5, and it's a mistake. I had completely forgotten that this game followed, at least in the first few moves, the exact same move list as the other one. These are from 2 different nights, so, I wouldn't have had like a fresh memory of the other one. It's not like I played them back to back. But anyway, so here I played c5. Why is that a mistake? And it says it's a mistake because they can take it. Well, I was thinking that they would. And if they took it, I would take here, right? Yeah, I would take their queen. They would have to take with the king, losing the right to castle. And then it says I would play f5 to protect that pawn. Well, I might, or I might play knight to f6. Why is c5 a mistake? Now, the second move here, I get that they can take this, but it says I'm still ahead if they do that. If they take my front e-pawn, then I'm still ahead, and I'll just take here. Honestly, I would probably take with my queen to kind of offer the queen trade. But I don't know. Maybe that would be bad. But my opponent blundered on the very next move. Instead of taking the pawn that I clearly left undefended, or taking this one like Stockfish wants, they took a different one. And no, I don't understand, but I have had opponents do that right off the bat, and I think one of the reasons is disruption. Certainly in the bullet and blitz range, there's a huge mental advantage, psychological advantage that can be gained in many cases, depending on your opponent, by just doing disruptive things that take your opponent out of their comfort zone. And I have that happen sometimes in rapid games because that move has to be bad. It just gives up a piece for a pawn. The only downside for me is that I have to move my king. Of course, they can check or something, but I can block that check with the pawn, and I've just got one of their pieces. It's going to make it a little uncomfortable for me to castle, but that's the only thing that I can think of, is this is kind of that disruption theory. Of course, I took back, and I think I was guessing correctly because my opponent did come over and check me, and I blocked with the pawn. I'm just up -3, but now they can run over here and I guess get that pawn that they really wanted. And here it says I should have played knight to f6 to protect that pawn. Okay, I just knew I was up a piece for a pawn already, so I offered the queen trade right off the bat. According to the engine, since their queen is defended, they should just leave their queen there and play bishop to g5. If they did that, I would take their queen, take back with the pawn. I would play bishop to g7, and I would still be ahead. So even though it counted that as inaccurate for me, I'm still ahead. What was it before? It was -3.5, and playing this took it to -3.2. I'm surprised it counted that as inaccurate. But my opponent did not play bishop to g5. They checked me down here, which puts me back up to nope. Well, Stockfish jumped up and down, but it's about what it would have been on the previous turn if I had played the best move. I'm supposed to block with this knight over here. Oh, knight to d7. Or knight to e7, but it's definitely bad to block with the bishop. Bishop to b7. Oh, because that gives up the bishop. Oh, I understand that one. I understand why that's a whole blunder. My opponent is actually ahead now because I just gave up the bishop, and my opponent found it. Good job for them. I'm supposed to play queen to f5. I do not know why. Or just take their d-pawn. Really? Yeah, I could just take their d-pawn now. Well, I don't know why I didn't see that, but I saw where their queen was. I thought it was worth chasing, so I played knight to h6 here to get out of the way of this rook. The rook's defended by the queen, and of course, they can just take this pawn. And right after I moved that, I saw it. So even though that one wasn't counted as a blunder, maybe it should have been. Oh yeah, we went from +1.9 to +3.2. It should have been at least a mistake, but it wasn't counted as anything here. Because yeah, they take here. And I think I'm just going to lose a rook. Yeah, I'm eventually going to lose a rook. But they didn't take there, and I don't know whether this was a mouse slip. I don't think it was. They took 15 seconds on it. And now we're back to nearly even. If I'll play knight to g4, I'm guessing knight to g4 is threatening, not quite checkmate, but I guess that's what I'm threatening. I don't know, because it wouldn't happen because they would put their queen back here on g3, and then we would just keep playing. I could also play king to g7 now. I can't really explain my next move, knight to f5, but I also don't know why it's a mistake. Knight to f5, it puts an extra attacker on this pawn. Yeah, I'm not really sure why I played it. I guess the problem according to this is that they can now take the b pawn again. Whereas if I had played knight to g5, I'm threatening something, so they can't take my b pawn. Okay, I think maybe I understand that one. But instead they took my c pawn, which is not one of the moves. We're even again, but I need to play rook to d8 or e3. And apparently other moves are okay, because the move I played didn't set us back much. I played up here, because my pawn is still defended, now the rooks can defend each other. The problem I thought was that, oh, the b pawn still can't be defended, but they're not supposed to take it. They're supposed to play c3 or bring their queen back to f4, but they did take the b pawn, which I thought was a good move at the time. What was I supposed to do about it? Knight f to d4. I was supposed to put my f knight up front, not the back knight, but the front knight. Okay, I don't know why that makes such a big difference. I know this knight's undefended, so I moved the c knight up to d4. But that's a blunder, and that is a blunder because my opponent can take the e pawn. Oh, they couldn't take it earlier because the c knight would have been in the way. Okay, they did take the e pawn, so now my opponent's ahead. I need to move my a rook to c8, but I moved the wrong rook to c8, which is inaccurate. Goes from +1.8 to 3.1. That's worse than inaccurate. That's a mistake. Of course, I'm aiming at this pawn, but of course they can defend it. They're not supposed to defend it. They're supposed to play c3 or bishop to d3. They did play bishop to d3. Now I can take this pawn. I can also play rook a to b8. Either way, my opponent's at +3. Okay, well, I did take their c pawn, but I'm still way down if they play their best move. castle or c3 again. They're supposed to have played c3 several times, or knight to c3 is pretty good. They did castle, so they're still at +3. My best move is knight to d6, bringing this knight back here because now my front knight's defended by the bishop, so I can attack their queen. Well, that's the exact kind of thing that I like to do, so I found that. They're supposed to go to queen to f4, and they did. I'm not supposed to trade for it. Well, I think I've mentioned a bunch on this channel that usually at my level, I'm pretty confident trading queens if everything else is relatively equal. Here, it's not exactly equal. My king side's a lot more messed up than theirs, but I have so many opponents that play poorly after I take their queen. So I took their queen and they took back. I need to play g5 or knight to c6. I didn't. I put the knight back over here. I have no idea why it's +4, but they are supposed to play the c-pawn. They did not play the c-pawn. They took that knight that I had just put there, and now we're even. And I don't even have to take back. I can check. I can check first. Oh, that bishop's hanging. Okay, well, I took this bishop, and they followed with another blunder. They're supposed to defend that square right there, e2, but instead they went over this way, which allows me to take it. Oh, I should have just taken it with the bishop, but instead I checked here first, which gives me their bishop because they only have one legal move, and then I take that one. Oh, okay, so I did see it, and now they can either take my bishop or save their other one. And they're supposed to save the one that they have. But instead, they took that one, which allows me to take theirs. Now they have doubled pawns, and I'm up a piece. So I'm ahead. Wow, I'm about out of time, but it looks like I was ahead for a little while. But then I gave it away in a couple of different steps, got it back for a second, and gave it away again. Okay, I guess, look, 1, 2, 3 moves to give it away. I'm going to go to the last one that gave it away. I'm still up a piece here. Okay, well, I said a bunch of stuff in the last several minutes that was all mixed up because I didn't remember the game exactly, but I thought that this blunder here is what was a problem for me, but I didn't know it put me behind. I thought that it maybe took us to even because it allowed them to check me here and win the knight. But I mean, they do have a couple of extra pawns. It is my best move to check them, their best move to come toward me, and I'm supposed to bring it all the way back down or to e7. It doesn't really matter. I'm still way behind here. I did not realize that. I just wanted to stay close here and keep an eye on these pawns. The problem is, of course, that they can just come toward me again. I ran away. I still want to keep an eye on this pawn and, you know, keep my options open over here. But my opponent blundered here. It didn't take away a ton of their advantage, but that's a blunder because I can check them rook to b2 or I can go to b5, but they're still way ahead. So I don't know why it said blunder there. Sorry, it was +7 and it took it to +4. They're still way ahead. I wouldn't count that as a blunder. This was a mistake because it gives up the pawn. No, not because it gives up the pawn. It's a mistake only if they play f6. Okay, well, I thought if they took that pawn, I might be able to take this one. But I didn't know that it was a blunder for them to take the pawn. It was, and this actually is a blunder because now we're back to even if I take g3, which I did, and we're drawn for the rest of the game for a ton more moves. Now here I can understand my opponent not wanting to repeat because they still have extra pawns. But, you know, after they did that and they went over here to protect that one and I went after this one, they can't stop me from taking it. Then I'm going to get that pawn, you know, before too long. So I took it. I thought they were going to take my rook here and I was going to take theirs and it was going to be over, but instead they moved over. So I thought, okay, they wanted to continue. So I went over, not sure what they were going to do. And then about here, I started trying to repeat, but they kept running and kept coming. So I was like, okay, I have to run away. And this is where I thought they should have known that it's a draw. So I'm just going to check them. I thought they would go back and forth and it would be over right there. But then instead they changed direction. Are they thinking they can win? I don't know. So we're just going to run around a little bit. And then they started doing it again. And right here is where we got the second position repeat. And then we had to go back and do it again to get the draw. But anyway, wow. I'm underqualified to evaluate this game and tell you why I lost and or won. I mean, in the places during the game where I went way ahead or way behind, obviously I drew the game. I didn't lose or win it, but there were places in the game where I should have either lost or won it. And most of those mistakes I don't understand. I do think it's funny that, you know, the game started off very similarly to the other one and then my opponent did the same thing, but here I did not play knight to f6. If any of you have any insights, feel free to drop it in the comments. I go through these because most of the time I get at least something out of it, but I feel like I did not today. That's the way it goes sometimes. Thank you for spending your time here. I'll see you next time.